making this video about pole dance and about my journey with pole dance, why I started, what I am presently getting out of it. So to begin with, I am a year and a half into my journey with pole dance. I took my very first pole dance class a year and a half ago at a studio in Baton Rouge. I bought a Groupon for it. I did 5 classes, and shortly after that, I went back to New Jersey and I found a different studio that had a totally different style. So for me, one of the things that I appreciate about pole dance is I have a background in dance. I started out in ballet and tap and jazz, and they call it the suburban trio. And then I actually majored in it when I went to Rutgers, which was more of a modern dance program. And then within a few years of graduation, I was typecast for a Southern Italian folk company that danced off Broadway in New York. So I had an extensive background in dance anyway. I had a background in bodybuilding. So for me to walk into a pole dance studio, it ticked every box for me. It was strong and balletic, and I could see how I was able to excel at this sport pretty quickly. It was sensual and beautiful, and it was difficult. It's hard. It doesn't feel good. You get bruises everywhere. But it was a wonderful dance style, and that attracted me initially prior to realizing how much healing I was going to get out of it. And pole came to be instrumental in my trauma recovery journey. So we'll get into that in a moment, but this first class at this studio up north in New Jersey, in my hometown, was a different style. It was slightly less about acrobatics and pole tricks and combinations. And this particular studio, and especially this particular class, that first class I walked into, was very sensual, very juicy, very feminine. And and I'm in class, and my teacher goes, "Touch your body." And we're doing all of this stuff, and we're just kind of like, ooh, luxuriating in all of that juiciness. And that class, I just cried and cried and cried. And it was a dimly lit studio, and she did come to check on me, and she's like, are you good? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just feeling all this stuff. And like, what a sweet class, because they just let me do my thing. Week after week, I'd go in, they'd play the music, we'd start with our warm-up, and it wasn't just touching your body, it was like squats and pull-ups and working out. But I'd cry through the whole warm-up, because so often we just aren't that kind to our bodies. We nitpick them, we find things that we don't like, we focus on things that we wish were radically different instead of appreciating things more similar to as they are. And so for me, I was already divorced at this time, but years prior to that, I got married pretty young. I was 25 years old, so in New Jersey, that's young. And shortly after our vows, I experienced a major marital trauma. It involved sexual abuse. Physically, my body was not harmed, but there was enormous psychological damage at that moment of the trauma, and then for years after. I stayed involved in that marriage for 5 years. So this trauma occurred around month 9, and then I hung in there for another few years, not really realizing how bad it was getting. But for the purpose of my day-to-day survival and to avoid triggers, those intense emotional responses that we get when something reminds us of our trauma, I began to mute my sexuality. I started to avoid dressing certain ways. I started to avoid certain groups of friends. I even avoided watching sexually based scenes on TV, and I've never been particularly conservative. I am conservative-ish, but I've never been particularly conservative. But to see sexuality in action was so heavy and so upsetting. Traumas are interesting like that. They're so dense that you need some time and some specified focus and a professional to, not always a professional, but often a professional to help you work through them. And so another note on trauma is often, even if we experience a trauma in adulthood, there's often a mirror of that trauma that goes back a lot earlier. So this was a sexual trauma for me in adulthood, but I could also see that similar trauma mirror in my childhood. Thank goodness I was never hurt. I was never sexually abused in my childhood, although it's extremely common. If this is you, know that you are not alone. There are a very large percentage of both women and men that have experienced childhood sexual trauma, so you're not alone in that. But for me, this adulthood repression of sexuality was mirrored in my childhood repression of my femininity. And that femininity is often expressed in softness, in being gentle and being nurturing, in being very intuitively connected, and even in something as subtle as moving more slowly, moving more mindfully. And we see that come up a lot with kids where they kind of dawdle. It's hard to get them to move and to get to school and get the thing unpacked and get in the bathtub and get in bed and all that. So a lot of kids are going to come up with that same kind of repression, and it is what it is. We can work with it. So coming home to any rejected or repressed part of yourself often involves a journey with a lot of triggers, those emotional responses. These are the things that hurt. And I think a lot of men kind of get shit on. It's on the cuff. I can't think of nicer words to say, but they kind of get a bad rep because someone might say like, he's lashing out because his masculinity feels threatened. And it's like, yeah, trauma is really triggering. He is going above and beyond because it's upsetting to have your core essence challenged. And so that's a really example for men, but to turn the mirror back on me, that's exactly what was happening for me. I was encountering situations where my femininity was so fragile. My belief in my ability to be feminine was so fragile. It was so easily threatened. And so these showed up for me as getting triggered around my body, my beauty, being seen or being judged by outsiders, anything from body shape. I'm built like my dad. That's just the long and the short of it. I'm built like a brick shit house. It's an athletic build. It's not the typical, Kardashian body or, whoever. Who are we attracted to now? I don't even know. Whoever those hot girls are, like, it's not that particular body shape. It would come up as comments like, being at the gym, I have like a decade of personal training experience and I've competed in bodybuilding, and random people at the gym would be like, don't lift your arms too high as you do a fly, you're gonna grow your traps. And it's like, fuck off. But beyond, more upset than I needed to be. Triggers around body weight, which is so personal. You really can't please everyone. I don't think you can please anyone, really. You can please yourself. But beauty is so subjective. If I were to stick a photo of myself on social media, let's say I get 10 responses, I might have a few of those people saying, "You look great." A couple of those people commenting something not at all related to it. And then there's going to be another section of them that are like, "Oh, you could do this," or, change your lifting style, or they would come up with some kind of negative critique, some way of, based on my interpretation, they would say something that would make me feel like my femininity just is not enough. It's not a crowd pleaser. It's not good enough. It doesn't measure up. And or even things like other women. My grandmother, she's passed on. I think it's okay that I share this, but she would say, "Jillian, I'm 33 right now. I'll be 34 soon. I don't wear makeup. I never have." And she'd be like, "You're an adult now. You should buy some Mary Kay." And it's like, "You selling it, Graham?" I'll buy it from you. I'm not gonna wear it. But even just little comments that can seem caring. "Hey, your weight's gone up. Do you feel all right?" Or, if you live in a woman's body, that 1 or 2 or 3 pounds of period bloat makes you look radically different. And it does affect us, hormonal changes do affect us. So for me, as I worked through these traumas and these triggers, there was a large part of it that required me to do things like go into meditation and feel that part of myself that felt threatened at some time about being the girly girl, or, maybe I'll be less loved if I don't want to play baseball, or maybe I'll be left out in the cold if I don't learn to meld in with what my brother and his friends want to do. I'm a middle child, so my brother was older, my sister was younger. I always wanted to hang with him. And so that is some deeper inner child kind of work that needed to be done. But with regard to pole dance, the community itself, because of its diversity, because of its receptivity to people like sex workers, exotic dancers, people that are often stigmatized or looked down upon, because of their presence in the community, it just made it such an accepting place. My goodness, walking into that studio, like every woman's body, men too, but mostly women, every body was beautiful. Every body was different. And so pole gave me a really safe space to appreciate, just put looks aside and appreciate that I'm getting stronger. Look what my body's able to do. Look at this move improving. And especially for me, as I learned how to find a happier, a healthier expression of my sexuality, where I didn't have to push it away and fear it, I was able to come into my own and see myself as a sexual being and still be safe and not have my boundaries being pressed on by a lover or, whoever person might have been involved in my life at the time. And it also gave me a place where I didn't have to feel like my sexuality or my worth as a woman was going to be measured or judged in any way. And this does occur with men. I don't believe that men mean to do this, but I've often felt judged by men in my life measuring my sexual worth or the worth of my beauty and how that stands up in the world and what kind of weight that carries about me as a person. And it has seemed that really carried a little bit too much weight in determining my value as a person. So with that, I'm really happy to share that my healing journey cracks on. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, I'm very pleased with it. I got a lot more to do, but I am grateful to have found sports I like, dance forms that I like, communities that I really resonate with. And if I could offer anything to you, it would be the reminder that you are capable of healing, you are strong, you are beautiful, your worth is not predicated on sexuality or anything of that nature. You are a whole person and you have incredible qualities, some that you can't even see for yourself just yet. And if you've been considering pole, go ahead and take that class. It's a blast. You will have fun, you will be achy, you will get bruises, or if there's another special something, a dance form or a sport or something that you've never done before that you want to try it out, go ahead and try it out. Experience what it's like to be out of your comfort zone, to be a beginner at something. Your time will not be wasted. You will have a learning experience and you'll grow. And so with that, I will wrap up the video. I love you so much. I love you, I love you, I love you. I hope to see you next time. All my love.